Jesuit. He's from the city of Waterford in the south of Ireland, and he is, you see Rockport, who is Waterford. He wants to be a calificador, which means an official of the Inquisition. And look where he is. He's in Mexico, and it's only 1644. The Irish are everywhere. Información genealógica. If you want to join the Inquisition, friend, you have to make sure that your background is impeccable. Like if you get into politics now, if you did anything bad, make sure nobody knows about it, or preferably don't do anything bad. Don't do anything bad at all. Andrew Carroll, who's from Ireland, he wants to become a familiaris, which is an informer to the Spanish Inquisition in Córdoba in 1719. Because he does, his family is investigated, and we have pages and pages and pages on his family in Ireland, which we never have if we didn't have the records of the Inquisition. And look at Juan Tomás O'Reilly, obviously a Chinaman. And he is an escribano público. He's a public official of the Renta del Tabaco in Puerto Príncipe, in Port-au-Prince, which has had such a terrible time more recently. And he wants the confirmation of the title of anotador of the hipotecas y tributos de dicha ciudad in 1819. He's not before the Inquisition, but he's managing the Inquisition's money. The Irish, of course, are hugely ingenious. Censorship of books also comes up. That's one Irish Historia Antigua in the 17th century. I won't delay on that. Now, there are a huge number of Irish soldiers in Spain, because there are 3 Irish regiments: Irlanda, Hibernia, and Ultonio, or Ultonia. That's the Ulster Regiment, the Hibernian Regiment, and the Irish Regiment. Soldiers are difficult to control, and they come before the Inquisition in very large numbers indeed. Mostly for drunken talk and for improprieties committed against the reputation of the Inquisition, because generally speaking, soldiers are too busy fighting to worry a lot about religion and about theology. Okay? So they're usually up for social discipline. Okay? Freemasons. And that's only in the 18th century, because there weren't Freemasons before that. I have 3 of them here, and they're hugely interesting. The first one is a man called Alexander Frenchley in 1740. He's from Ireland, Natural de Irlanda, according to the record. He's a wine merchant. No surprises there. But look where he was initiated into the Freemasons. In Boston, not a million miles from here. He was a member of the Royal Exchange Lodge. He was taken in his ship on a journey to Spain, and he was tried for Freemasonry in Spain. Okay. Look at the second guy, Manuel O'Doyle. How late it is, 1850, military officer. Where was he initiated into the Freemasons? Not in Spain, but in Nancy, during the French Revolutionary Wars. He comes back to Spain, someone doesn't like him, he's accused of Freemasonry, and he has troubles with the Inquisition. And look at the last guy, Edward Wogan, 1757, medical doctor, initiated where? In the Philippines. He's a really interesting guy. That's 1757. There's a letter in Spanish archives from him from 1750. And what is it? It's a letter from the Archbishop of Manila. Wogan is his doctor. The Archbishop has a case of herpes. Which sort, I don't know, it doesn't go into it. But it is certified by Wogan. And the Archbishop is so sick with herpes, he wants an auxiliary bishop. So Wogan's medical cert is sent back to Madrid as evidence that the Archbishop is in a weakened state and needs help. 7 years later, he is before the Inquisitors for Freemasonry. So with the Inquisition records and others, you can begin to build a picture of the sort of lives these colonial Irish had in places as far away as Manila. You'll be glad to hear that Edward Wogan was absolved. He made a hugely positive impression on the Dominican, who was the Inquisitor, who thought he was an absolutely charming man, and he talked his way out of it. Now, I want to conclude with 2 examples in a little bit more detail. 2 famous Irish cases before the Inquisition. And the first one is William Lampert from the county of Wexford, and his name in Spanish is W.N. And he went to his eternal reward, courtesy of the civil power, at the behest of the Inquisition, in the year of our Lord, 1659. Okay, having spent 17 years in the prisons of the Inquisition in Mexico. Now we're extremely lucky here, and again, I've done this for you, because I think so much of you, at great personal expense. I got these two images together, and they deserve a little bit of explanation. The first one is a picture after Van Dyck, okay, the famous Dutch, isn't he, painter. I'm getting my notes here together, there's a bit I've forgotten, which I don't want to admit. This has gone on longer than I thought. Okay, here we are. Now, painting, tasteful painting is after Van Dyck. Okay? It's of two people, and you can see who the star of the picture is, the person sitting down who looks self-important. And he's Giancarlo de la Fayette, who is an extremely important Jesuit mathematician from the University of Leuven, or Louvain, in Belgium. The man who is obsequiously presenting a parchment to him is our man, Lampert from Wexford. What's he doing in a Van Dyck painting of a Flemish Jesuit presenting a document to him? There's an extraordinarily interesting biography which I'm going to tell you a little bit about in a moment. Picture number one. Picture number two, even more intriguing. You may have been to Mexico, Mexico City. You may have visited the monument to Mexican independence. If you search at the base of the monument, you will find a statue, which is the one I have reproduced here, which is of the very same person, Lampert from Wexford. So how is an Irish victim of the Inquisition a hero of Mexican nationalism and a subject of a Van Dyck school painting? Interesting. I'm intrigued by it. I hope you are. Okay. And a little bit on this Gillian fellow, this Lampert. He's arrested in 1642 in Mexico. He's held for 17 years. He has two trials, not one. The complete transcript is in Mexico. Nearly 3,000 folio pages. Extraordinary. I mean, we just don't have this documentation for people at the time. It's an absolutely extraordinary thing. He also has personal papers in the Biblioteca Cervantina, which is in Monterrey, which I'd love to go to sometime. And he's a set of treatises and psalms. He was a psalter. So obviously he's a creative man as well as being a man in deep trouble. He's born in Wexford, friends. He goes to Dublin, where he's educated by the Jesuits. He goes to London, where he's educated in the King's Inn, legally. He passes to Spain, where he enters the school of the SUNY. He goes to the Netherlands, which is Spanish at the time. He comes back to Spain. He becomes associated with the minister Olivares, the most powerful man in Spain. He's in the Escorial College. He welcomes several fugitive Irish, Fulgencio, Nugent, we see immediately, in 1637. He develops relational difficulties, it's over here, matrimonial difficulties, which he's really not supposed to have in 1640. I call those relationship challenges. Okay, some of you may know what I'm talking about. And he decides it's a good time to go to America. And he does. And he comes to Mexico. And he becomes involved in a set of tensions between two influential groups of people in Mexico, the Creoles and the Peninsulares. The Spanish officials born in Mexico and the ones who come over from Spain to tell them what to do, and they don't like it. Okay? He's also consorting with African slaves, because we find a dictionary of African terms in his papers. He's also consorting with Native Americans because he wants to try out peyote. See, can he tell the future? Honestly, this is all in the records. And he decides that the Mexicans need liberation. actually writes up a declaration of Mexican independence. Now, there's about 10 reasons why this fellow should be tried by the Inquisition. He's held there for 7 years, tried twice, becomes delusional, and is executed, I'm afraid, garroted and burned by the civil power in Mexico in 1657. Okay? Now, he's extraordinary for a whole lot of reasons, and one of them is his network of Irish friends. Because in the record, you find out who his Native American friends were, who his African friends were, who his Creole friends were, who his Peninsulary friends were, and also who his Irish friends were. John Lombard, Diego de la Cruz, Derek Nugent, a Wexford Carmelite whose name we don't know, and a Clonmel boy, a town in the south of Ireland, Miguel de Santa Maria. We don't know his name, but we know he was a Franciscan. John Martin, and I'm finishing now, so hold your breaths. I told you about him already briefly, didn't I? He went over to the New World with John Hawkins in 1567. The ship is captured by the Spaniards. There are 40 Lutherans on board. Several of them are Irish. Everyone is tried except Martin, who somehow slips under the Inquisitor's radar, apprentices himself to a barber, learns the trade, flees Mexico, and goes up to Guatemala, to a place called La Trinidad, falls in love with a beautiful Spanish woman, gets married, and is expecting a child, as well as exercising his barbering profession, when he is called back to Mexico by the Inquisition. You missed it the first time, but they rarely miss you the second. Okay? Now, his testimony is from 1573 and 74. It's very early. It's of an Irish person in not just abroad, but abroad in the New World. And it has a level of personal detail which is absolutely extraordinary. Some of the nuggets he tells us, some of this you will already know, but it's nice to see it confirmed. Why did he leave Ireland? He said Ireland is la más miserable tierra in the world. Do I need to translate that? Okay, we know that already. Interestingly, they ask him all sorts of questions about what's Ireland like. He says, actually, it's not a bit like Spain. He said, why? There's no political organization there. Okay, in other words, it's not as structured as Spain. He said, there is no petition or appeal, the people not knowing how to read and being very rustic. Okay? Religious practice, we know that he can say the Our Father in Latin, Spanish, and English. He can say the Ave Maria and the Credo as well. And we know he's married. We know his in-laws love him. We know that the parish priest of La Trinidad in Guatemala thinks he's absolutely wonderful and shouldn't be before the Inquisition at all. We also know a huge amount about his network of friends, his English and his Irish shipmates. And we see there's a John Brown of Waterford, who was also tried by the Inquisition. There's a Harry Keane or Quinn, perhaps another Irishman. There's a William Brown, and I love the last guy, who is Domingo Suarez. He's the barber, masquerading as a Spaniard, but he's from Ireland. It's very wisely taken a Spanish name. Now, why he's been tried by the Inquisition in Spain, and I'm afraid this is a story with an unhappy ending. He receives a letter, and the letter is from Juana, his Spanish wife in La Trinidad. I hope you don't mind if I read it for you, because it's so early and it's so beautiful. Okay? You can't read it up there unless you have absolutely eagle-eyed vision. I'll read it for you. She writes, I received your letter, and God knows the happiness and contentment that my heart